The air was heavy that night, thick with a weight that pressed down on your chest, as if the universe itself had paused, waiting for something inside you to awaken. The streets were empty, shadows stretching long and thin, and even the wind seemed reluctant to move. It was the kind of stillness that only comes before a shift too powerful to yet understand, a quiet before the storm that carries change on its shoulders. You could feel it in your bones, a vibration that wasn't fear but a deep, primal recognition that the course of your life was bending toward a moment you could not yet name. The energy whispered across your skin, brushing your neck, slipping under your clothes, and settling deep into your spine, like the invisible hand of destiny guiding you toward a path your rational mind had never traced. And in that silence, your heart throbbed with the faint echo of a blessing that had been written for you long before you existed. Your mind drifted to the years you carried more than you should have, the silent burdens you shouldered in isolation. You had held family responsibilities that weren't yours, worked tirelessly for dreams that seemed to vanish before they could fully form, and given love that was never reciprocated. Yet somehow you endured. You endured in a way that drew strength not only from your own determination, but from a hidden reservoir of divine persistence that had been stitching you together in secret. Every sleepless night, every unspoken tear, every quiet moment of despair had been an investment in your readiness, a preparation for a moment the world would recognize too late, but you would already know in your soul. And as that realization pressed against you, the shadows around you seemed to lean closer, curious, as if the universe was acknowledging your readiness to receive what had long been held back. There had been signs, subtle and persistent, that now revealed themselves as not coincidences but confirmations. Keys appeared in your dreams, sometimes hanging from invisible threads, sometimes glinting faintly in the corners of rooms you thought were empty. Doors you had approached but never dared open seemed to whisper, their hinges aching to swing wide. Even water had become a symbol, appearing in unexpected places, flowing strangely, reflecting images you could not yet decipher. These symbols carried weight because they were not idle, they were invitations, signals that the structure of your life was quietly, insistently realigning. And if your spirit feels this awakening, stay close, because what is approaching does not knock. It arrives, it settles, it takes root. A story came unbidden to your mind, a story of a man whose name history had almost forgotten. He had been imprisoned for years, accused falsely, abandoned by those he trusted most, yet each day he woke with the same resilience he had been born with. His name was Joseph, and though the prison walls were cold and the nights darker than any despair could endure, he carried within him a vision of what was possible. One morning, without warning, he was led from the darkness into the palace, clothed in robes of honor he had not asked for, standing before power he had only dreamed of. Your life mirrored this story in ways that made the heart shiver, for you too had faced corridors of confinement, not walls of stone, but walls of circumstance, opinion, and limitation. And now, the energy around you was bending toward a palace that had been prepared for your arrival, unseen, yet unmistakably present. Even the world of celebrity offered proof, as if reality itself conspired to mirror spiritual truths. Opera had been dismissed, rejected, and misunderstood before stepping into her destiny as one of the most powerful voices of her generation. J.K. Rowling had faced rejection after rejection, a life teetering on the edge of despair, before the manuscript that would define a generation found its way into the hands of those who could elevate it. These stories resonated with you because they were not fairy tales. They were real-life echoes of a spiritual law. Preparation often appears as trial, and blessings often arrive in forms that the world cannot yet recognize. And as these echoes mingled with your own inner rhythm, the shadows that had always lingered around your dreams began to shift, bending into shapes that suggested not danger, but opportunity, not loss, but awakening. The night deepened, and with it came a quiet pressure, a force that seemed to pulse in tandem with your heartbeat. Mountains appeared in your dreams, massive and unyielding, their peaks hidden by clouds that shimmered with silver light. You climbed them in silence, one foot after another, feeling the strain in your muscles, the burn in your lungs, the ache in your heart. Yet the climb was not punishment, it was preparation. Each step was a lesson in endurance, a reminder that you were capable of carrying more than you had ever believed. At the summit, there was no view, only a door, locked and unyielding, etched with symbols that spoke directly to your soul. The key to open it was not in your hand, yet you felt its presence, hovering in the space just beyond comprehension. It was a key you had always carried within you, though you had forgotten it existed. Storms had followed you, both literal and figurative, for years. Sudden betrayals, financial hardships, unexpected endings, and silent heartbreaks. You had faced them alone, or so it seemed, carrying the burden of unseen weight with the same quiet determination that defined your sign. But these storms were not the enemies, they were heralds, clearing the way for what was coming. Lightning flashed not as warning, but as illumination, casting light on truths you had avoided, lessons you had postponed, and opportunities that had been hidden behind layers of fear. The rain, fierce and relentless, was not destruction, it was baptism, preparing the soil for seeds long buried to finally take root. And in the midst of this storm, you felt a strange warmth, a presence that did not belong to the world of the seen, but moved within it, nudging you toward a destiny you had only glimpsed in fragments. You remembered another real-life story, one that had become almost legend in certain circles. A woman, burdened with the responsibility of raising her siblings alone after the sudden loss of her parents, had worked 3 jobs, carried debt, and endured heartbreak silently. No one recognized her perseverance, most believed she was failing. Yet in the quiet of one night, she felt an unusual peace descend upon her. The next week, she received an opportunity that shifted her life entirely. A career offer that not only lifted her financially, but positioned her as a guardian for others facing the same hardships she had endured. Her story was the mirror you had been searching for, the proof that divine alignment often arrives through channels the world deems impossible. And as the memory settled in your consciousness, the air around you thickened, as if the universe itself leaned closer to witness your next steps. Keys appeared again, not in dreams this time, but in reality. A metallic glint caught your eye in a forgotten drawer. A figure passed you in the street holding an ornate keychain. Even in conversation, certain phrases echoed the language of unlocking, of opening, of permission granted. You realized that the universe communicates constantly through symbols, and the more you tuned into them, the more the path ahead revealed itself in unexpected ways. This was no ordinary alignment. It was divine architecture in motion, and every key, every shadow, every whisper of wind was a brick in the corridor leading to what had been promised before you were born. If your spirit feels this awakening, stay close, because the invisible forces circling your life are aligning in ways you cannot yet see. You sensed, almost physically, the drawing near of what had been delayed for your protection. Financial doors, spiritual doors, doors of destiny, all vibrating with readiness, waiting for your recognition, waiting for the step that would activate the alignment. It was the energy that had lifted Joseph from the pit, the energy that had elevated the Wright brothers to flight after repeated failure, the energy that had guided Mandela through the long corridors of imprisonment into the presidency. And now, it was moving toward you with the same precision, the same intentionality, the same sacred timing. A shadow moved in the corner of your vision, subtle, almost unnoticeable, yet impossible to ignore. It was not dark, but filled with a strange luminescence, as if carrying the memory of something divine. You felt the presence of a guide, a messenger, or perhaps a guardian, an entity that had been stationed at the edge of your life, waiting for the exact moment to step fully into your consciousness. And with its presence came the sensation of something precious, a treasure, a blessing, poised to arrive. You could feel it stirring, moving closer, yet held in a space just beyond the grasp of your senses, teasing you with a weight that was both immense and intimate. You thought of a celebrity whose journey mirrored your own struggle, Tyler Perry, once homeless and rejected, who persevered through isolation, ridicule, and financial despair before stepping into a destiny so vast it seemed impossible. His story became a symbol in your mind, proof that preparation often appears as pain, that trials are not punishments but calibrations, that the unseen labor of endurance is what primes a soul for extraordinary reception. And as the memory of his ascent blended with your own quiet determination, the spiritual pressure around you intensified, sending ripples through your chest, your mind, and the very core of your being. The mountain in your dreams began to tremble faintly, not as a threat, but as an announcement. Peaks shifted, clouds shimmered, and the door at its summit pulsed with anticipation. You felt the key in your spirit turning slowly, deliberately, guided by hands invisible yet familiar, hands that had nurtured you in secret, hands that had been present in every hardship, every failure, every sleepless night. The lock clicked with a sound that resonated deep within, a vibration that aligned with the very rhythm of your destiny, signaling that the threshold was near, the final preparation complete, the doorway waiting for your courage to claim it. Storms circled once more, though now they seemed to dance rather than batter. Lightning arced across the sky, illuminating your path, the peaks, the door, and even the shadow at its edge. Rain fell in a pattern that seemed intentional, each droplet carrying a frequency that harmonized with the pulse of your heart. You remembered the biblical story of Elijah being fed by ravens, how provision arrived in moments when hope seemed impossible, when the natural eye could see no path, but divine timing unfolded perfectly. Your own provision, immense and long-awaited, hovered on the edge of manifestation, tempered by preparation and carried on currents of unseen but undeniable power. You recalled the story of the man who lost everything only to inherit millions days later, and the woman who carried her family through despair to receive an unexpected fortune. These narratives were not coincidence. They were confirmations that the invisible laws of preparation, perseverance, and divine alignment were at work. And as your breath slowed, your awareness sharpened, you felt the door begin to shift, a faint glow seeping through its edges, a light that was alive, ancient, and intimately connected to the blessings that had been promised to you long before you understood their magnitude. The shadow at the door moved forward, no longer hesitant. Its presence filled the threshold, illuminating the black box you had carried in your dreams, a box that now shimmered with a potential you could almost touch, almost feel, almost claim. Your heart thumped in anticipation, a rhythm in perfect alignment with the unseen currents converging upon your life. And just as the box began to tremble, releasing a faint warmth, a light, a vibration, the very air around you seemed to pulse with a force that promised transformation, elevation, and fulfillment. You could sense the first movement of the blessing, subtle yet undeniable, brushing against the contours of your life with precision. The energy reached into your past, your present, and your future simultaneously, knitting together every lesson, every hardship, every act of perseverance into a single thread of destiny. The key, the door, the shadow, the box, the mountain, the storm, they were all converging now, aligning with a force far greater than you had ever imagined, a force that carried the promise of wealth, of recognition, of divine favor. And as the light from the box spilled further, as the shadow advanced with certainty, as the mountain trembled beneath the weight of destiny, as the storm whispered secrets of provision and elevation, a single truth began to emerge, one that would not be revealed in full, not yet, but that would change the trajectory of everything you thought you knew about your path, your power, and the blessings waiting to descend. The dawn was not gentle that morning. It was as if the sky itself had waited to exhale, holding a secret that only those attuned to the pulse of destiny could sense. A subtle vibration traveled through the air, brushing the streets, the trees, and finally, you, stirring something long dormant in your spirit. You woke with the weight of night still clinging to your chest, a lingering shadow that whispered of unfinished journeys and unopened doors. There was a tension in the quiet, a pressure that moved not outward but inward, settling into the very fibers of your being. And in that stillness, a small flame of awareness sparked. One that burned not for comfort, but for recognition, a knowing that the path you had been walking, though invisible, was converging toward a revelation that would alter the shape of your existence. The shadows that had always lingered in the corners of your life began to stretch, elongating into forms that hinted at truth and danger simultaneously. Each memory, every encounter that had left an invisible scar, was a teacher in disguise. You remembered the nights spent carrying more than your share of burdens, giving to those who took without understanding, and speaking only when silence was safer than words. Every act of quiet perseverance had built a reservoir of strength you had not yet realized you possessed. The mountains that loomed in your dreams, their peaks hidden in clouded mist, were no longer simply obstacles, but symbols of the endurance required to reach the place where blessing and destiny could meet. And as your pulse quickened, the edges of those mountains seemed to hum with the energy of doors waiting to open. If your spirit feels this awakening, stay close, for the universe is preparing to move in a way that demands your awareness. You felt a ripple of anticipation, as though the air itself was vibrating with a secret rhythm, one that mirrored your heart but carried the cadence of something far greater. The sensation was subtle at first, a brushing across your consciousness that stirred memories of people, places, and moments that had seemed insignificant until now. They were signposts, markers left by unseen forces, guiding you toward a convergence that had been in motion long before your first breath. It reminded you of a story you had once heard, about a man whose life was orchestrated with precision beyond understanding. Joseph, imprisoned and forgotten, yet destined to rise at the precise moment the world could no longer contain the magnitude of his blessing. The real-life echoes of this pattern were undeniable. You recalled the woman who had built an empire from the fragments of her broken life, working silently for years while the world laughed, doubted, or ignored her. Each sacrifice, each moment of isolation, each decision to remain steadfast despite fear had compounded into an invisible inheritance that manifested at exactly the right time. You could feel her journey pressed into your bones, a reflection of your own hidden resilience. These stories, woven from the threads of history and lived experience, whispered a truth that hovered just beyond comprehension. The weight of preparation is heavy, but the moment of arrival is heavier still, and it is reserved only for those whose spirits have endured. The room around you seemed to thrum with the presence of the unseen. Keys appeared in dreams and glimpses, symbols of access and authority waiting for you to claim them. Doors, once locked and intimidating, now vibrated with the memory of purpose. And within the walls of your own consciousness, a small black box materialized, suspended in the air, glowing faintly with an inner light that suggested knowledge and power beyond ordinary reach. The sensation was tangible, a magnetic pull that drew your awareness toward it even as a shadow lingered at the periphery, neither threatening nor benign, but pregnant with possibility. The box was a symbol of the next stage, a container of what had been held in reserve, awaiting the precise alignment of timing, courage, and recognition. Your mind traveled to storms that had shaped you, literal and figurative, times when the wind howled through your life, ripping apart stability, scattering plans, and leaving only fragments in its wake. You had endured betrayals, financial crises, and personal upheavals that seemed insurmountable, yet they had not destroyed you. Like the biblical account of Job, each trial had refined you, chiseling away fear and impatience, honing your capacity to receive that which was meant for you. The storms were not punishments, they were instruments of calibration, designed to prepare your spirit for the magnitude of what was approaching. And as you reflected on this, the shadows in your mind seemed to condense, forming shapes that hinted at the very forces that had guided you through every unseen battlefield. A figure emerged in the corner of your awareness, not fully formed, yet unmistakable in its intent. It was a presence that carried authority, yet its energy was neither harsh nor benign. It was precise, deliberate, and intimately connected to your destiny. You felt it move in synchrony with your breath, packing your thoughts, guiding the rhythm of your inner life without ever speaking a word. Its presence brought a tension that was electric, a reminder that the time for passive waiting was over. Preparation had ended, now alignment was required. You felt drawn forward, compelled to recognize the latent patterns of your journey, to acknowledge the unseen currents that had moved you across years and lifetimes. And as you inhaled, the air itself seemed to pulse with an almost audible heartbeat, signaling that what had been held in reserve was drawing near. You recalled the tale of the entrepreneur who, on the brink of collapse, received an anonymous investor who changed the trajectory of his life. The timing was not coincidence, it was orchestration, the meeting of invisible forces with visible action. Your own life had been shaped similarly, though in ways subtler and more insidious. Every setback, every closed door, every moment of silent endurance had been a mechanism of divine engineering. The world may not have recognized it, and you may have doubted it, but the alignment was unfolding with a precision that no human understanding could predict. And within this awareness, the pressure intensified, pressing against your chest, sharpening your senses, and preparing you for the emergence of what was long concealed. The mountain in your vision shivered with movement, not as a threat but as an announcement. Peaks shifted, clouds swirled, and at the summit, the door you had long feared seemed to breathe. Symbols etched into its surface glimmered faintly, forming patterns that spoke to a part of your consciousness that had been dormant. The key in your mind, once abstract and distant, now turned slowly, guided by hands unseen, yet intimately familiar. The vibration of the lock resonated with your very spine, signaling that the threshold was near, the final preparation complete, and that the doorway would soon respond to your acknowledgement, not in ordinary time, but in the precise rhythm of destiny. If your spirit feels this awakening, follow this message, for the forces converging upon your life are intentional and deliberate. The black box, once a dreamlike symbol, now shone with clarity, its energy reaching toward you with an almost magnetic insistence. Light spilled from its edges, illuminating shadows that had lingered for years, exposing patterns and connections you had never consciously traced. The weight of preparation, the endurance of solitude, the resilience in the face of despair, all of it coalesced into a single current of motion, a pulse that carried both blessing and responsibility. You could sense the first stirrings of transformation, subtle yet undeniable, brushing against the contours of your existence, and preparing you for an elevation beyond the scope of ordinary expectation. A storm gathered once more, but this time it moved in rhythm with your heartbeat. Lightning arced across your vision, casting illumination on the mountain, the door, the key, and the black box. Rain fell in precise patterns, each droplet a note in a song that only your spirit could hear. The presence at the edge of your awareness stepped forward, no longer shadow, no longer peripheral, but a figure whose energy demanded recognition. It carried a message, a blessing, and a confirmation of the alignment that had been in motion for years. Your chest rose and fell in synchronization with this unseen force, and with each pulse, the anticipation of the blessing grew, pressing at the limits of your perception, expanding the boundaries of what you believed possible. You remembered Tyler Perry, once homeless, mocked and dismissed, yet propelled by unseen guidance into a life of extraordinary influence and wealth. His path mirrored yours in subtle ways, the endurance, the hidden labor, the unseen preparation, and finally, the arrival of opportunity that seemed miraculous to the outside observer, but was simply the fulfillment of an invisible design. Historical patterns emerged in your consciousness, as if time itself were offering proof, moments where the impossible was rendered inevitable, where the unseen currents of destiny carried ordinary people into extraordinary fulfillment. And as these patterns intertwined with your own life, the energy of the black box intensified, vibrating with an urgency that compelled your attention and promised that revelation was imminent. The shadow that had lingered so long at the door now advanced fully, filling the threshold with presence, illuminating the edges of the black box as it trembled with life. The symbols on its surface glimmered in patterns that hinted at a hidden wisdom, a knowledge that had been waiting for the precise alignment of timing, courage, and awareness. Your pulse quickened as the energy pressed closer, a subtle warmth radiating from the box into your chest, a light brushing your mind with hints of understanding you could almost grasp. The alignment of past, present, and future seemed to converge in this singular moment, preparing the stage for a revelation that was both intimate and immense. Remain connected here. Your path is shifting, because the forces at work are deliberate, intentional, and profoundly personal. The black box began to emit a resonance that vibrated through your bones, stirring memories, patterns, and possibilities long dormant. Keys, doors, shadows, mountains, storms, all the symbols that had guided you appeared to converge in a single pulse of recognition. The energy around you thickened, vibrating with the promise of change, elevation, and a blessing that had been long awaited. The presence at the threshold leaned closer, its movement precise, deliberate, and full of the weight of unseen authority. The air itself seemed to thrum with expectation, each breath drawing you closer to the heart of the revelation. Light poured from the black box, spilling across the mountain, the door, and your own body in patterns that spoke a language beyond words. The vibration of the lock resonated through your spirit, the shadow at the edge of perception now fully realized, the key in your awareness turning with inevitability. And just as the energy reached its apex, as the alignment pressed fully against the boundaries of your perception, as the first hints of the blessing began to brush the edges of your consciousness, the moment suspended, hanging in the air, a pause pregnant with divine promise and unspoken power. And in that suspended moment, the black box pulsed once more, brighter than before, as if drawing breath itself, its resonance filling every corner of your being, touching memories, dreams, and desires long held in secret. The mountain quivered, the storm whispered, the shadows bowed, and the key hovered at the edge of the lock, poised to turn. Every symbol, every story, every preparation, the storms, the mountains, the endurance, the quiet faith, was converging, aligning, crystallizing into a singular moment of revelation that had been written for you before your first breath. And just as the pulse reached its crescendo, the black box, the key, and the door awaited only the final act, the touch, the acknowledgement, the release that would unlock what had been destined to arrive. The morning light broke unevenly, scattering across the mountains in fragmented beams that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. The peaks, once distant and immovable, now trembled in subtle recognition of forces you could neither see nor name, yet felt with every fiber of your being. There was a vibration in the air that pressed against your chest, a resonance that tugged at memories long buried, secrets long held, and doors long avoided. The shadows of past mistakes, whispered fears, and unspoken dreams shifted around you, forming shapes that felt almost alive, as though the universe itself was waiting for you to move in synchrony with a pattern that had been laid long before your birth. And in that suspended rhythm, the silence carried weight, a pregnant stillness that demanded attention, focus, and the awakening of every hidden sense within your soul. The storm that had always lurked at the edges of your life began to converge with purpose. Lightning arced across the sky, illuminating paths that had seemed invisible, casting sudden clarity on the jagged terrain of your struggles. Each drop of rain carried the echo of providence, tapping rhythmically against the stone and earth, a pulse that mirrored the silent beat of your heart. If your spirit feels this awakening, stay close, for what has been orchestrated for you will not announce itself in ordinary ways. The storm was not a threat. It was a messenger, a herald of transformation, a signal that the currents of your life were aligning in ways unseen, invisible, and yet undeniably potent. Even the mountains, ancient and immutable, seemed to bow to the rhythm of this divine orchestration, shaking gently as though in recognition of a destiny pressing close. The memories of your endurance rose like smoke from the ashes of past pain. Nights spent carrying invisible burdens, watching opportunities slip like water through your fingers, offering support to others while silently collapsing under the weight of expectation. All of it had been preparation. You remembered the real-life story of the woman who had sacrificed herself in silence for the sake of family and community, unnoticed by the world, until one day an unexpected fortune arrived, reshaping not only her life, but the lives of those she had quietly nurtured. Her perseverance mirrored yours. The invisible labor of faith and resilience was always acknowledged in realms the world cannot see. And as the echoes of her life intertwined with your own, the air thickened with an almost tangible tension, signaling that your own moment of recognition, of divine intervention, was drawing near. Keys emerged once more, in glimpses and shadows. A metallic glint caught your eye in a forgotten drawer. The wind stirred, revealing a pattern etched faintly into a surface you had never noticed. Doors, long thought inaccessible, seemed to breathe, expanding imperceptibly as if aware of the presence of one ready to claim what was rightfully theirs. The black box, that symbol of unseen preparation and hidden blessing, shimmered faintly at the edge of perception, radiating energy that was at once both intimate and immense. Every shadow, every subtle vibration, every symbol you had encountered over years of silent struggle converged into this threshold moment, pressing against your consciousness, insisting on acknowledgement, demanding recognition of the invisible work that had brought you to this precipice. You recalled the story of Joseph, cast into the pit, abandoned, forgotten, yet lifted to a position of unimaginable influence and authority at precisely the moment predetermined by the unseen. The resonance with your own path was undeniable. You had endured betrayals, losses, nights of silent despair, and moments when every door seemed closed. Yet here, on the edge of awakening, you could feel the invisible currents aligning, the threads of history, providence, and persistence weaving themselves into a tapestry that only your spirit could perceive. Even the example of Tyler Perry emerged, a reminder that those who persevere unseen, who endure storms with quiet faith, are often the ones called into an elevation the world cannot yet comprehend. The mountain beneath your feet seemed to pulse with recognition. Peaks shifted, clouds shimmered, and a door that had appeared unreachable now quivered with possibility. Symbols etched upon it glimmered in patterns that spoke directly to your soul, the key you had long carried within, the strength you had cultivated in solitude, the lessons of endurance, patience, and faith. Your heart pulsed in rhythm with the resonance emanating from the door, the black box, and the storm around you, an internal echo of the cosmic alignment that was unfolding. And just as your breath synchronized with the rhythm of unseen forces, the shadow that had lingered at the threshold moved forward, filling the space with a presence that was at once protective, guiding, and commanding, signaling that the moment of reception was imminent. The storm intensified, yet now it carried no threat, only clarity. Lightning revealed paths long hidden, illuminating patterns of your life that had remained invisible in ordinary light. Each strike was a note in the symphony of alignment, a reminder that what had been delayed was never denied, that what had been withheld was always intended for this precise moment. Your spirit recognized it with a resonance that coursed through your veins, awakening long-dormant intuition, sharpening awareness, and preparing every part of you to receive what had been held in reserve. Historical echoes of divine timing, from the rise of ancient kings to the sudden fortunes of overlooked innovators, whispered through your consciousness, affirming that preparation, patience, and perseverance are always precursors to elevation. The black box pulsed more intensely, casting a glow that illuminated every shadow, every symbol, every key you had collected along the path of silent preparation. The vibration pressed against your chest, a tangible energy that moved through your bones and settled in your core. You could sense the presence of guardians, invisible yet undeniably present, orchestrating the alignment, moving obstacles, and preparing the terrain for what was about to emerge. Real-life stories of sudden provision and miraculous elevations surfaced, a woman receiving an unexpected inheritance after decades of struggle, a man discovering a hidden talent that transformed his financial reality overnight. Each story reinforced the unseen principle that divine timing moves according to preparation, not urgency. Mountains, shadows, keys, and locked doors converged in your mind, forming a lattice of symbols and memories that resonated with destiny. The door at the summit trembled with anticipation, the lock responding to a key that existed only in the invisible corridors of your consciousness. Every hardship, every sleepless night, every act of endurance had brought you here, to a point where the ordinary and the extraordinary intersected. And as the black box vibrated, shedding light on patterns and truths long ignored, the air itself seemed to thrum with expectation, carrying a pressure that demanded your full attention and unwavering presence. If your spirit feels this awakening, follow this message, for the currents of destiny are converging with precision, clarity, and intention. The shadow at the threshold advanced fully, its presence both guiding and commanding, pressing the energy of the black box into your awareness. Light spilled from its edges, revealing patterns, symbols, and hints of the blessing that had been orchestrated for you before birth. The mountain beneath you trembled, the storm whispered secrets, and the doors of possibility shivered in anticipation. Every element of your journey, the storms, the mountains, the shadows, the endurance, and the preparation, had been orchestrated to bring you to this single, pregnant moment of alignment. The pulse of the black box intensified, synchronizing with the beat of your heart, the rhythm of the storm, and the vibrations of unseen guardians. Each note resonated through memory, endurance, and hidden potential, aligning every facet of your existence with the cosmic current flowing toward you. Real-life stories, biblical narratives, and historical echoes all merged into a singular awareness. The unseen hand guiding, the preparation completed, the moment of reception approaching. Your chest rose and fell with anticipation, the air vibrating with a sense of imminent revelation, and the shadows bowed to the light, acknowledging the arrival of a force that had long been held in reserve. The black box lifted slightly, hovering in space with an energy that was alive, ancient, and profoundly intimate. The key within your spirit turned with inevitability, guided by forces unseen but intimately known. The mountain trembled beneath your feet, the storm whispered in patterns only your soul could decode, and the shadow at the threshold stepped fully into presence, radiating authority, protection, and guidance. All the symbols, the trials, the endurance, the quiet faith, the overlooked labor, merged in a single pulse of alignment that pressed insistently against the boundaries of your perception, signaling the imminent arrival of a blessing long promised but never fully revealed. Remain connected here, your path is shifting, because the currents surrounding you are deliberate, precise, and divinely orchestrated. Light spilled from the black box, illuminating the edges of the mountain, the shadow, and the locked door, revealing patterns that had been invisible until this moment. The resonance filled every fiber of your being, awakening intuition, sharpening awareness, and preparing you for reception. And as the vibration reached its crescendo, as the alignment of past, present, and future pressed fully against the contours of your consciousness, the first hints of revelation began to stir, touching the periphery of understanding, brushing the edges of the blessing with the certainty of inevitability. The black box pulsed once more, casting shadows that danced with intention and light that revealed unseen pathways. Mountains quivered, storms whispered secrets, and keys hovered at the threshold of locks that had long resisted. Your spirit aligned with the pulse of destiny, resonating with a frequency that harmonized with every act of endurance, every trial, every silent night of perseverance. Historical, biblical, and real-life echoes intertwined, confirming that preparation, resilience, and faith are always prerequisites for elevation. And in the tension of this convergence, the moment of revelation hovered on the edge, heavy with promise, intimate with potential, and poised to change the trajectory of your life in ways the world could not yet comprehend. The shadows and light danced together, merging into a rhythm that filled the air with electricity. The black box quivered, resonating with an energy that pressed against your awareness and promised transformation. Keys, doors, mountains, and storms all responded to a force that transcended ordinary understanding, aligning perfectly with the work of preparation your spirit had undertaken in silence. The presence at the threshold leaned closer, emanating a power that was neither threatening nor benign, but absolute in its authority. And as the resonance intensified, the currents of destiny gathered around you, converging into a single palpable force, signaling that the moment of the long-awaited blessing was imminent, waiting only for the final spark, the final recognition, the final alignment that would unlock what had been promised before you were born.